So let us now first learn about a few characters or features of this connective tissue, and then we will move on to the types of connective tissue. So if you take this connective tissue, they are widely spaced, which means that they have large intercellular spaces. We told in epithelial tissue they have very little intercellular space, right? So if this is 2 cell, in case of epithelial tissue they will have very little space between 2 cells. But in the case of this connective tissue, 2 cells are having large intercellular spaces. Intercellular എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ 2 സെല്ലിന്റെ തമ്മിലുള്ള space തന്നെ it will be very large, right? Now, how is the space? What is the space filled of? This space is filled with the inter or extracellular matrix. So the space which is seen between the cells is filled with the dense fluid which is called as intercellular or extracellular matrix. Why is it intercellular matrix? It is because it is between 2 cells. 2 cells in the nadukilana ullathu, right? And why is it named as extracellular matrix? It is seen outside the cell. So that both terms are almost similar, right? So it is the spaces are filled with dense fluid which is called as the intercellular or the extracellular matrix. Dense fluid. So we are seeing this in the connective tissue, right? So in the epithelial tissue also I told you about the intercellular matrix, which will be very less, and I have told about the fibers, presence of fibers, non-living part called fibers there, right? So here they have a very great role to play in the case of connective tissue, right? So the space between the cells are filled with dense fluid which is called as intercellular matrix or else the extracellular matrix, right? Now, if you take the case of this extracellular matrix, we can divide them into 2, right? So it includes the ground substance and the fibers, right? So what is this extracellular or the intercellular matrix made up of? It is made up of ground substance and fibers, right? So it can be divided into 2. Extracellular matrix can be divided into 2. One, it includes the ground substance, other one is the fiber, right? So I will just show an example, children. I will just draw an example so that it will be clear for you. Just think this is the epidermal tissue, and below the epidermal tissue think that these are few connective tissues here, right? So these are few connective tissues, and we can see the space between them in which we can find the intercellular or the extracellular matrix, right? And in this extracellular matrix or the intercellular matrix, we can find 2 different substances in this matrix. One are the fibers which we find in the matrix, and the other one is the ground substance, right? Appo ee fibers ee cells ഒഴികെ ബാക്കിയുള്ള പ്ലേസിനെയാണ് ground substance എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. See, ground is a place where our land completely is ground, right? In that many different objects and animals and living things are present. Same way, ground substance is completely covering the extracellular matrix, and in that ground substance, in between the ground substance, we are able to find the connective tissue and the fibers. They have main role to play inside the connective tissue. മനസ്സിലാവുന്നില്ല? അപ്പോൾ ഇതെന്ന് പറയുന്നത് it is the fiber. Extracellular matrix, it includes the fiber, and also I'll just write it here. So it is fiber, and other than the fiber and the this is the cell, right? So this is the connective cell. So other than the connective cell and fibers, the other ground substance which we see is the ground substance, right? So other baaki varuna ella portions it has been completely covered by the ground substance, right? Clear, children? Clear with it? Okay. Now let us see what is present in the ground substance and what is making up this fibers. Okay, let's first take the case of the fibers. I will just write it. So it contains 2 things. One is the fiber and the other one is the ground substance. I am just writing as GS, right? So extracellular matrix, I am writing it as M, right? So it is extracellular matrix. So this extracellular matrix, it includes fibers and the ground substance, right? And fiber na parayunnathu cell, in the extracellular matrix we are able to find fiber and ground substance. Fiber are the substances which is seen along with the cell, and ground substance is nothing but it is a thing which completely surrounds the cell. Completely found in that connective tissue. A connective tissue എടുക്കുമ്പോൾ അതിൽ നമുക്ക് ഫൈബേഴ്സും സെൽസും കാണാൻ പറ്റും. Other than that, ബാക്കിയുള്ള മൊത്ത സ്പേസും കവർ ചെയ്യുന്നത് it is the ground substance, right? Now let us see what is this fiber made up of, what is this ground substance made up of and all, right? So if you take the case of fiber first, except blood, right? Please keep in your mind, in all the connective tissue except blood, the cells will secrete fibers, right? So except the blood ഒഴികെ ബാക്കി എല്ലാ connective tissues like cartilage, tendon, then bones, all these places, right? So these, all the other connective tissues except blood, their cells will secrete fibers of structural proteins which are called as collagen and elastin. Okay. So what do they secrete? They secrete collagen or elastin, right? So all connective tissues except the blood has the fibroblast cells. Fibroblast cells എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഈ ഫൈബറിനെ പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്ന സെൽസിനെയാണ് we are calling it as fibroblast cell. And what do they secrete? They secrete fibrous proteins called collagen and elastin. Okay, elastin, collagen എന്ന് പറയുന്ന രണ്ട് fibrous proteins-നെയാണ്, structural proteins-നെയാണ് അവർ produce ചെയ്യുന്നത്, right? So please keep in mind, fibers are made up of protein, right? Keep in mind, fibers are made up of protein. So the cells will secrete, which cells will secrete? The fibroblast cells in the connective tissues will secrete the structural protein which is called as collagen or elastin. Right? Clear? Okay. And what is the function of these fibers? They are the one who provide strength, elasticity and flexibility to the tissues. Right? Connective tissues na strength കൊടുക്കുന്നതും അതുപോലെ തന്നെ elasticity കൊടുക്കുന്നതും and then the flexibility. Right? So flexible means it can be flexible, it can move in any direction. Elasticity means it can expand, and strength means support which it gives. Right? So connective tissues, they are able to get strength, elasticity and flexibility due to the presence of the fibers, right? And what are these fibers made up of? It is made up of structural proteins. Okay, clear with the children? Okay, there are two types of fibers which they form. They are forming collagen and elastin, right? So they secrete fibrous protein which is called as collagen and elastin. Clear? Now let us see what is this ground substance. As I said, it is forming the complete other part of the matrix. Extracellular matrix in the major portion of empty spaces of the extracellular matrix is covered by the ground substance, and this ground substance are also produced by the fibroblast cells. ആരാണോ ഫൈബേഴ്സ് പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്ന അവരെന്നെയാണ് ഈ ഫൈബ്രോബ്ലാസ്റ്റ് തന്നെയാണ് ഈ ഗ്രൗണ്ട് സബ്സ്റ്റൻസിനെ പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്, റൈറ്റ്? സോ ദ സെൽസ്, ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് ദ ഫൈബ്രോബ്ലാസ്റ്റ് സെൽസ്, വിൽ സെക്രീറ്റ് സം മോഡിഫൈഡ് polysaccharides which accumulates between cells and the fibers. Clear, children? So these cells, which means that the fibroblast cells also secrete modified polysaccharides, right? And they will accumulate between cell and the fibers, and they act as the matrix or the ground substance. Clear? So extracellular matrix, it includes the fiber and ground substance. Clear with it, children? Okay, now let us move on to the next part. Let us now learn about the connective tissues types. So connective tissues are classified into 3 types. How many types? It is classified into 3 types. One is loose connective tissue, the next one is dense connective tissue, and then is the specialized connective tissue, right? So loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue and specialized connective tissue. Let us learn about each of them in detail. See here, connective tissue, it is divided as loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue and specialized connective tissue. right? So we'll be learning about loose connective tissue in detail, about dense connective tissue, and also specialized connective tissue in detail. So before we learn, we'll just see how these loose connective tissue, dense, and the specialized connective tissues are divided into types. So loose connective tissue, it is of two types. One is areolar adipose tissue. Areolar tissue and adipose tissue are two loose connective tissue. And then dense connective tissue is dense regular and dense irregular. And then the specialized connective tissue, it includes the cartilage, bone, and the blood. Right? So first let us start with the loose connective tissue, children. So as the name says, these are loose connective tissues, which means that the cells and fibers are loosely arranged in the semi-fluid ground substance. But ground substance cells and fibers are arranged, it will be loosely arranged. As the name says, it is loose, right? So it is loosely arranged in the semi-fluid ground substance. That is why it comes under the loose connective tissue. You can see it here, right? So they are not very tightly packed. They are they are arranged loosely in the semi-fluid, which is the ground substance. Our ground substance cells and fibers, they are loosely arranged, right? And if you take the case of this loose connective tissue, as I said, it is of two types. It is areolar and adipose connective tissue. Okay, right? So we will learn what is this macrophages, mast cell, etc. Where does it come? We will learn that. I hope you know what is fibroblast, right? So they produce the fibers, and macrophages and mast cells are included in this loose connective tissue. When we learn about the types of connective tissue, you will understand it, right? So it is areolar and adipose. Let us now see the areolar connective tissue, right? So this is a type of loose connective tissue which is present beneath the skin. It is present beneath the skin, and it is the one which connects the skin to muscles. Namala skin in muscles node connect in a tissue a loose connective tissue areolar tissue, right? So it is a tissue which connects the muscles to our skin. Clear? And what is the function of this areolar tissue? It serves as a support framework for the epithelium. So epithelial tissues a support framework act, right? So where is it present? It is present beneath the skin, and it serves as a support framework for epithelium, right? So you can see in the diagram, children, this is the diagram of the areolar tissue, and here you can see the microscopic view of the areolar tissue, right? So we will learn what are the different cells which are seen, and then we will learn the diagram portion. Okay. So this areolar tissue is the one which contains the fibroblast, which means the cells that produce and secrete fibers, and also it has the macrophages and the mast cells in them, right? So these each cells, they have their own function to do. Fibroblast it helps in the formation of the fibers. It produces and secretes fibers, and other than that we are able to find the macrophages and mast cells. Not this alone, we are able to find other cells also in the areolar tissue, right? So these are the major cells which we find in the areolar loose connective tissue, macrophages and the mast cell. Right, so you can see the fibroblast here. This is the fibroblast cell from which the collagen fibers have arranged. Right, so this is about the areolar tissue. Now let us move on to the adipose tissue, children. So this adipose tissue, it is seen mainly beneath the skin. Right, so like the areolar tissue, it is also seen beneath the skin, and it is specialized to store fat. Its main function is to store fats, right? So it has a type of cell which is called as the adipocytes. Adipocytes na parayna cells aanu adipose tissue ulladu, and its main function is to store fat. That is why it is present in that is beneath our skin, right? So it is a layer which provides heat to our body when there is cold condition. Nalla thanappulla samayathu nammade sharirathinu choodu kodukkunnathu, it is the part which is called as the adipose tissue. And what does it contain? This adipose tissue, it stores fat, and evidinana ee fats varunathu, excess nutrients are converted into fats and it is stored in this tissue. Okay.